Antoinette's little farm in the big city. Our book today is Yucky Worms, written by Vivian French and illustrated by Jessica Alberg. Yucky Worms. One day, when I was in Grandma's garden, Grandma dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. Yuck! I said, throw it away. Throw it away? Grandma looked horrified. Would you throw away one of your friends? You can't be friends with a worm, I said. You can't even tell which end is which. Yes, you can. Watch. Grandma put the worm down. It gave a kind of squirmy wiggle and disappeared really fast, pointy end first. I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. Where did it go? I asked. Home, Grandma said. It's an earthworm. It lives underground. And you can see on this book also it has a diagram of a worm, and it shows you all the parts of the worm. And then it has some stuff up here. It says, in most backyards, there will be about 15 worms every square yard of soil. But what does it eat? Dirt? I wanted to know. It eats tiny, tiny stones and bits of dirt, Grandma told me. But worms eat other things, too, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it's cool. The stones and dirt help to grind everything up in a worm's stomach, and then the worm poops it back out. And then the worms are just saying stuff about their food. It says, yuck, I can't eat this, and it's trying to eat a button. And it says, here, worms come above ground to find things to eat too. They pull their food back down as they wriggle into the ground again. It's wriggle. Grandma pointed at the flower bed. Look, can you see? I bent down and I saw what looked like a weird, long, curly worm made of dirt. That's worm poop, Grandma said. It's called a cast. You know, when you recycle things, well, worms do too. There's still a lot of goodness left in the things a worm eats, and when the goodness comes out again as poop, it helps plants to grow big and strong. And as the worms move around, under and on top of the soil, the poop gets spread around the garden. And gardeners even buy it at the garden center sometimes, too. That's why worms are my friends. Grandma gave me a thumbs up. And it's not just their poo that's good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen the soil, so roots can stretch out and air and rainwater can get in. Oh, wow. And then look at all the little wormholes. And then air and water get into the soil. And the worms are all just saying, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Oops, I forgot something. Better reverse. It says worms can wiggle backwards and forward. Some people call worms underground farmers. In a square yard of soil, there will be about 4 yards of earthworm tunnels. Wow, that's a lot. That must be what our gardens look like underground. But it's dangerous being a worm, Grandma said. I stared at her. Dangerous? I asked. She smiled at me. Lots and lots of animals think worms make the most delicious dinner. I think here on the little farm we know that, don't we? Birds love them, and so do moles, badgers, frogs, hedgehogs, and foxes. Even some slugs eat worms. And humans accidentally slice through them with spades and spike them with forks. It's a tough life. Cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Grandma, I said. They just turn into two worms and keep on growing. Grandma shook her head. Poor worms. A lot of people think that, but it's not true. She puts her fork down. Time for a snack. What is that? I think that is a mole. And he has worms on his shopping list. A worm's tail can regrow if it's cut off, but cutting a worm in half will kill it. Grandma had tea, and I had orange juice. Can I dig up a worm? I asked. If it rains, Grandma said, the worms will come up on their own. I took a cookie. What if it doesn't rain? Grandma winked at me. We'll use the watering can and pretend. I finished my cookie as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? And it says, worms breathe through their skins. They don't mind the soil around them being wet, but if their tunnels are flooded, they come up to the surface to move around more easily. There's a lot of information in this book. Grandma filled the watering can, and I watered the ground. Then I stood back. I didn't want worms chewing at my shoes. They only put their heads out, Grandma promised, and it'll be a while before they do. It says, when it's very hot and the soil gets too dry to slither through, a worm will wiggle down to where the soil is still damp, curl up, and wait for rain. When it's very cold, a worm will wiggle down even deeper below the frost level and curl up with other worms for warmth. I didn't know that. That's what it says here on this side. Worms are kind of interesting, aren't they? Did I turn the page? Miss Annette, turning pages. Grandma was right. I had time to eat 2 more cookies before she said, "Look!" "Wow!" I said. I could just see the tip of a worm above the ground. Now watch this. Grandma stomped her foot, and the worm disappeared. "Did it see you?" I asked. Grandma shook her head. Worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations. Thump like that might mean a hungry bird is landing. Danger. Grandma dug her fork in the ground. Up came lots of dirt and wiggly worms. She picked one up and washed it in the watering can. "Mustn't drop it," she said. "They can't swim." Grandma put the clean worm on some paper and held it near my ear. I could hear a tiny rustling noise. What's that? They're covered in little bristles, Grandma says. The bristles and their muscles help them move. looks interesting. Worms have ridged muscles all along its body. To move, it pushes its front end forward and uses its bristles to hold that end in place while the back catches up. The bristles on the back end keep the worm from sliding backwards, while the front end tunnels forward again into the earth. And so this is down here. And it shows it close up of the bristles on a worm. I didn't know that either. I'm learning a lot today, are you? About worms? I've got muscles too. I bent my arm so Grandma could see. If you've got so many muscles, she said, maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedlings. Okay, I agreed, and then I thought of something. When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to say that I've got lots of new friends. Good idea, Grandma said, but I said, I might not actually say they're worms. That was really interesting. I learned so much about worms today. And not only do the ducks and the chickens like the worms, the birds like the worms, and I didn't even know that foxes ate worms. Wow, a lot to learn today, wasn't there? Well, I'm glad that you came to the little farm to learn with me. Thank you for visiting the little farm. Make sure you get outside today, and we'll see you next time. Bye!